Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here tonight, and appreciate all the men that came to the prayer room. If you didn't come, you missed it. Tony Wilcox got to take his name off the prayer board. He's 100% cancer-free, so we gathered up all the men that could to come in there, and he gave a short testimony and took his name off that board. And one thing I liked about it, we had all the young boys that were in there that were in there in the gym playing to come in there and sit down, where they could listen to that. You know, that's important to put that into our young men and our young women, that we have a God that's still able to take someone that is right at the edge of death and slip down that wounded hand. That's powered by prayer of the saints to reach to that one and lift him up out of that disease, that cancer, and praise God and make him whole. I'm excited about that. Are you tonight? Praise the Lord. Let's stand to our feet. All over the building, let's stand. And we've got such a special speaker tonight to come, and he's been doing an absolute wonderful job for us. And what we're going to do, we're going to have our ushers come. We're going to receive an offering tonight. Everything you give will go to him, and we just look forward to blessing him tonight and hope that you'll do that. As our ushers come, let's pray. Kind Jesus, we love you. God, we thank you for a wonderful day. God, thank you for doing the unthinkable for us at times. God, we praise you. Lord, we love you. God, we thank you for touching and healing our friend, Tony Wilcox. We pray that you bless this offering, Lord, multiply it as you did, Lord, those 5 loaves and 2 small fish. And God, we'll praise you for all you do. Bless the service above all. May someone be saved. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, and all God's people said, amen.
When I look all around and see the good things that he's done for me, I know I'm unworthy of them all. For his blessings that he freely gives, I owe my whole life to him. I've got so much to thank him for. And I've got so much to thank him, so much to praise him for. You see, he has been so good to me. And when I think of what he's done and where he's brought me from, I've got so much to thank him for. And sometimes while on this way I stop just to kneel and say, Lord, thank you for all you've done for me. And then one day I'll reach sweet heaven's shore. Oh, please let me kneel once more. I've got so much to thank him for. And I've got so much to thank him for, so much to praise him for. You see, he has been so good to me. And when I think of what he's done and where he's brought me from, I've got so much to thank him for.
Give the Lord a hand clap of praise tonight. Can you do that? Well, you can be seated. Today we had the last 2 days. We have been working Dr. McMurtry pretty hard. He's had 9 classes in 2 days, not counting the classes here at church. And so we are excited about what what he has done. Tonight, he's going to be talking about dinosaurs, teaching about what day they were born. Does anybody know that? What day that they were birthed by God, made? Well, you'll find out tonight. And they were born on 2 different days. Am I right? I know I'm right, or I wouldn't have said that. He has DVDs on that about Dinomania, the truth about dinosaurs, the Bible and the fossil record. Also, the road to man, which he also taught a little bit about today. And last night was awesome, wasn't it? And, I found out that I'm more kin to a rat or a sea squirt than I am a chimpanzee. And that's great. Matter of fact, we're just nearly as related to SpongeBob SquarePants as we are a monkey. And also, there's this book, In the Beginning. This book is written by Walt Brown, Dr. Walt Brown. It's probably the second best book or first best book on his table that he has. It's more of an encyclopedia going through the beginning nearly to now. So you would love to have this book for your teenager to look at, to grow from, or not even a teenager. Any kid at all or adult could grow from looking at that book. So we'd love for you to have it in your library. I don't get anything out of it. Church doesn't get anything out of it. But what it does do, it goes to support him, to get him up and down the road, to be able to continue to share what he has shared with us this week. Now, how many of you feel that the information that he has shared today is vital to the youth and their spiritual growth today? Can I see your hand? Absolutely. Let me go ahead and say this. The things that he has taught this week is second only to the gospel. Did you know that? Why? Nothing is greater than the gospel. But I'll tell you what he has taught this week makes the gospel even make more sense. Because who was Jesus? He was God in the flesh. Jesus was Elohim. Is God our creator. So he's teaching us about creation and what the Lord Jesus Christ did. Well, without any further ado, I want you to make welcome tonight, and it's his final night with us, but I want you to make welcome Dr. Grady McMurtry.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Well, let's first of all try this. Good evening. Yes. I am a little concerned, though. Pastor said it was my last night. I'm wondering whether he knows something I don't know. He also said that I was here without a further ado. And do any of you know what a further ado looks like? I'm not without it. I'd like to know what it looks like, you know. It's around to it? Akin to it. Yeah, it's an akin to it, which is like around to it, but it's not. Yeah, I got it. Well, we've been having a great time this week. It's a really joy and pleasure. Pastor said something, though, that I'd like to add tonight. Yes, the gospel is the most important thing. I think we'll all agree with that. But remember, without a doctrine of a young creation, there is no gospel. That's the problem. When people believe in an old earth and say they're Christians, they are denying the power of the cross. Because if the earth and the universe are old, if life and death have been going on for millions and billions of supposed years, then the death of Christ on the cross is meaningless. Because remember, death only came into the universe because of human sin. But if death was in the universe prior to human sin, then Christ's death on the cross is meaningless. It's only when you have a doctrine of a young creation that you can possibly understand how the death of one sinless man on the cross can atone for the sins of the world. So this is an essential thing to the gospel. With that in mind, tonight we're going to be talking about dinosaurs, the Bible, the fossils, what's really in the ground. What is the evidence that we actually find? I would remind you that I grew up not only as an evolutionist, but also in the paleontology laboratories at the University of California, Berkeley. I learned about dinosaurs early and evolutionary theory early in my life, and I continued to teach it until I was 27 years old. Again, I don't believe it anymore, and I think you do admit I have an interesting background. But when people find out about that background, usually the first question they ask me is, well, are dinosaurs found in the Bible? And I'll look them right in the eye and say, of course dinosaurs are found in the Bible. They read it every day. I assure you folks, you're going to want to be watching the screens. Things are going to happen up there when you're least expecting them. Hello? But let's talk about the word dinosaur. What does the word dinosaur actually mean? You know, your typical atheistic evolutionist is going to say the word dinosaur means terrible or thunder lizard. That's the two they usually use, okay? But the word dinosaur does not mean terrible or thunder lizard. The word dinosaur was invented in 1841 by a man named Sir Richard Owen. Now, Sir Richard Owen knew in 1841 what he was talking about. He knew the ancient language he was using, and the word dinosaur does not mean terrible or thunder lizard. The word dinosaur actually means awesome lizard. You see, in 1841, Sir Richard Owen believed that dinosaurs were part of God's awesome creation, and therefore he called them awesome lizards, and that's what the word really means. Well, we talked about finding dinosaurs in the Bible. We'll talk more about that. But the question we do want to talk about really is, are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? That's the question we want to take a look at. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask a question that we asked last night. If you were not here, you didn't hear the question, so I'm going to review it. Please tell me, all of you, if God starts the Bible on day 1, week 1, month 1, year 1, is there any such thing as prehistoric? Thank you. Not a chance. There is no such thing as prehistoric. Therefore, dinosaurs are not prehistoric, and dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible. There are 11 references in the Old Testament to dinosaurs. I'm going to show you where these are so that you can find them, but I'd like to ask you a question. Which book of the Bible do you think you would find the first reference to dinosaurs? Genesis, a good. See, I was trying to give you a little help there when I said which do you think you'd find the first? Hello? Now, in the book of Genesis, well, which chapter of the Bible do you think you'd find the first reference? Hello? First chapter. Excellent choice, I tell you right now. Let's just take a look. If you turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1, verses 21 to 23, this is day 5 of the week of creation. It says that God created the great sea monsters, but some English translations and the Portuguese translation that I have to use when I'm doing my mission work in Brazil, or the Russian word, which I have to know from the Russian Bible when I'm doing my mission work in Russia, uses the word dragon. Remember that before 1841, the word dinosaur did not exist. This is why you don't find it in the Bible. Before 1841, the most common word in almost every language of the world for dinosaur was simply the word dragon. Now, there were a few others, but that's the most common word prior to 1841. And what I have done on the screen, as you'll see here, is I have also shown what the Hebrew word is, but I have spelled it in English characters for you. And so, on day 5, God created the great sea monsters or sea dragons, also meaning the great marine reptiles, and everything, creature that moves. And it says then every winged bird, or you may have a translation that doesn't use that terminology, but the Hebrew word here does not mean feathered bird. It means any animal that flies through the air. So we're not talking about insects, but we are talking about feathered birds, mammals that fly, like bats, and reptiles that fly, like the pterosaurs and the pterodons and others that we're going to be taking a look at tonight. And so God created all the animals. Whoops, now how did you do that? Boy, I tell you, this thing must be touchy. Son of a gun. So God creates the reptiles that live in the water and all of the animals that fly through the air on day 5. Then we turn to Genesis chapter 1, verses 24, 25, day 6 of the week of creation. On day 6, God says, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures, cattle, creeping things, and beasts of the earth." That is a direct reference to terrestrial dinosaurs. So God made the large terrestrial reptiles on day 6. Same day as he made Adam and Eve. It's just that Adam and Eve were the last thing to come along on day 6. And so God created what you think of as dinosaurs, although the marine reptiles and the flying reptiles, they are not technically dinosaurs, but they are large reptiles, and those that live on the land on day 6. And dinosaurs lived with people contemporaneously for 1,656 years until the time of Noah's flood. And this was not a problem. Remember, if you take a look at Genesis chapter 1, verses 29 and 30, God created all the animals and people as vegetarians. They were not meat eaters. In fact, we were talking earlier this week, various classes, and I will show you. Even evolutionists have, for the last 16 years, agreed that dinosaurs were vegetarians. T-Rexes, velociraptors, oviraptors, the things that evolutionists want you to believe are meat eaters, are in fact vegetarians, and that's scientifically proven. Take a look at Job chapter 40, verse 15. Now, the book of Job occurs or is written about the year 2000 BC, 350 years after the flood. Remember that Noah was told to build the ark, but God sent the animals that he wanted on the ark to Noah. Is that correct? Noah was busy building the ark, right? Well, God sent what? 1 pair of each unclean kind and 3 1/2 pairs of the clean kind. Remember that reptiles biblically are unclean. And so God would have sent 1 pair of each unclean kind, that means 1 pair of each kind of dinosaurs, on the ark to be with Noah. Now, he sent 3 1/2 pairs of the clean, 4 males, 3 females. The 4th male is used in the burnt offering after the flood, leaving 3 pairs of clean to reproduce. Then we take a look. This is 350 years after the flood of Noah. As a matter of fact, tonight, if you would, those of you taking good notes, and I've noticed some of you certainly do, I'd like to do a little timeline real quick so that you'll recognize where these verses I'm sharing with you are chronologically. If you take a piece of paper, just draw a line right to left across the paper. It's going to be a timeline, and on the left end of the line, put 4000 BC, the approximate time of creation. At the right end, you can just put the cross. And so that line is going to represent the 4,000 years prior to Christ. So we start with 4000 BC on the left. Now, if you'll come over 1,656 years, roughly 1/3 of the way, and make a mark, that is the time of the flood of Noah. That means that the flood of Noah occurred at roughly 2350 BC. Then, if you come across just a little bit and make a mark, 150 years, and make a mark at the year 2200 BC. That is the time of the Tower of Babel experience. Then, if you come over to the year 2000, now that will be right in the middle of your line. 2000 BC, you make a mark, that is the time of the man Job, and Abraham was a young man at that time. Then, if you come over 1,000 years, that's 3/4 of the way over on the line, make a mark, that's 1000 BC. That is the time of King Saul, immediately followed by King David. Then, if you'll come over just 300 years more, make a mark at the year 700 BC. That is the time of the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah was a contemporary of the king Hezekiah. And so Isaiah is living about 750 to 700 BC. With that timeline, it's going to help you. So 350 years after the flood, at the year 2000 BC, the man Job is alive, and 4 chapters of the book of Job are a direct quotation of God speaking. chapters 38, 39, 40, 41 are a quotation of God speaking. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's a quotation of God. If that's not true, it would be blasphemy to have it in the Bible, correct? And in Job chapter 40, verse 15, God says, "Behold, Behemoth." Now, ladies and gentlemen, that word is not English. That is actually a Hebrew word, but spelled in English characters. It is not translated in the Bible. So what does the word mean? Well, in Hebrew, it would actually mean beast of beasts. Beast of beasts. So first of all, does that sound big to you? Beast of beasts, does that kind of sound big? I think so too. Please notice, he eats grass like an ox. He is a vegetarian, is that correct? Remember that God created even T-Rexes as vegetarians, right? Now, I've told you, I think, I am eternally grateful for Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, where God says, "Now you shall eat meat." And I take him seriously. But tell me, beast of beasts, that sounds real big, doesn't it? We go one more verse, verse 16. "Behold, his strength and power." This is a big, strong, powerful animal. And God said, "Behold this creature." Is that correct? Okay, in North Carolina, God said, "Looky here." Hello? But take a look at verse 17. In verse 17, God says, "This creature bends his tail like a cedar tree." Is that correct? Now, there are people who write commentaries on the Bible. They put marginal notes in the Bible and so forth. They lack faith. They lack knowledge. And they will say, "Oh, this is just some large land animal that we know of today." They will write in the margin of the Bible, "Oh, this is just a mammoth, an elephant, a rhinoceros, a hippopotamus," or something like that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's think for a second. God says that this creature bends its tail like a tree, right? Now, those people who say, "Oh, this is just an elephant, some big land animal we know today," well, let's think. I have done mission work in Africa on 3 different occasions. When they kill an elephant in Africa, they cut off the tail and they use it as a fly swatter. It's a hard way to get fly swatters, folks. It's very hard on the elephant. Do you people have no compassion? Well, let's take a look at that elephant. Does it have a tail the size of a cedar tree? I don't think so. How about you? What about a hippopotamus? Does a hippopotamus have a tail the size of a cedar tree? I don't think so. What's the matter? You've never been mooned by a hippo? But let's think for just a second. If an elephant or a hippopotamus had a tail the size of a cedar tree, let's think, what would they look like? Hello? Now, I think this is a large land-dwelling dinosaur being described by God 350 years after the flood. How about you? And let's take a look at verse 18. Notice verse 18 says, "His bones are like tubes of bronze and bars of iron." Ladies and gentlemen, you may think that's simply descriptive, possibly poetic, but the fact of the matter is that is an incredibly accurate scientific statement. Remember, reptile bones are hollow. Their bones are tubes. Hello? So this is a very accurate scientific statement. And then, how many of you have seen the Jurassic Park movies? Hello? Well, remember, those movies are not science. They are not science fiction. They're not even science fantasy. What are the Jurassic Park movies? Number one, they are entertainment. We will agree to that. They're entertaining, okay? But what are they else? The only other thing they are is pure propaganda. They're entertainment and pure propaganda. They were made specifically to promote evolution to our culture and society. And the problem is, those movies are not even consistent with the theory of evolution. There are many contradictions. The 4th movie was so bad, major evolutionists said you shouldn't go see it. Now, how bad can that be? Hello? But this is the drawing of a brachiosaur made famous by Jurassic Park movie #1. If you don't recall, this is the dinosaur that sneezed all over the little girl. Come on, folks, I'm just trying to bring back vivid memories, that's all. Hello? Now, brachiosaurs grew up to 43 foot long, and I would like to do something. I would like to show you the toe bone of a brachiosaur and compare it to the size of my knuckle. Would that be okay? Yep. Everybody with me? So the next photograph, this is the toe bone of a brachiosaur compared to the size of my knuckle. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Apparently not. Well, are you ready? This is just the toe bone of a brachiosaur compared to my knuckle. How y'all doing? Thank you. And this is the leg, the front leg of a brachiosaur compared to a man standing next to it. Tell me, does this look like tubes of bronze and bars of iron to you? Pretty accurate scientific statement, don't you think? Also, of course, if we take a look at Job chapter 41 and the entire 41st chapter of Job, God starts off, can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook? Now, ladies and gentlemen, God must love Leviathans. He mentions them 5 different times in the Bible. He devotes the entire 41st chapter of Job describing what one looks like, but they are also mentioned in Job chapter 3, verse 8, Psalm 74, 14, Psalm 104, 26, and Isaiah 27, 1. Do not worry about the little numbers you see over here. That's the Psalms numbering in Russian Bible. They don't number the Psalms the same way we do. Just concentrate on the big ones, okay? Now let's think. Job is 4,000 years ago, 2000 BC, correct? The book of Psalms was completed over a long period of time. It's possible to date some Psalms, but not others. If it's a Psalm of David, we know exactly when it was written. But some Psalms you can't date, okay? But Isaiah, the prophet, we know lived 2,700 years ago, correct? And the prophet Isaiah, do you consider him a reliable witness? Well, he says that there were still leviathans in the oceans only 2,700 years ago, correct? Now, up until about 70, 75 years ago, creation scientists like myself. Now, creation scientists are not something new. There have been creation scientists for hundreds of years. We follow in the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. But the modern creation science movement started 400 years ago with the great Christian creation-believing scientists with Sir Francis Bacon, Sir Isaac Newton, Boyle, Faraday, George Washington Carver, Louis Pasteur. These were all adamant, devout Christians who believed in a young earth, young universe. And, well, that's where we trace our roots back in the modern times is 400 years, okay? So we're not something new. But up until about 75 years ago, based on the evidence that we had, the very fossil evidence that we had at that time, we thought that the Leviathan would be something like this, a chronosaur, which goes up to 30 foot long, or the plesiosaur we have found up to 51 foot long. I think you'll have to agree that's a lot of reptile. Hello? But a good scientist always modifies their thinking based on new evidence, new research. Now, we didn't change our opinion, but we had to modify our thinking because, you see, back in the 1940s, we found this. It is called the super croc. You see, it is 40 foot long, found in the 1940s in the Sahara Desert. It would have weighed approximately 10 tons. I think you all have to agree that is a lot of croc. Hello? So the description of Leviathan in Job could fit this creature. Now, let me show it to you up a little closer and more personal. Now, this is a photograph of the actual skeleton in a museum. It is 40 foot long, but I find that people are really interested in the big jaws and big teeth of big animals. Isn't that kind of what draws us? Those big jaws, those big teeth, right? Well, let's take a look at the jaws. They're 6 foot long. And you see the little guy right there? He's called a light snack. Hello? And now I want to point out, take a look at those teeth. Again, 16 years ago, evolutionists declared that T-Rexes, velociraptors, oviraptors were all vegetarians. They were not meat eaters. They were not killers. Now, I want you to think about something. If you in your mind can think of a T-Rex skull from the movies or whatever, now they have big, long, sharp teeth. That's true. The largest T-Rex tooth of the largest male we have ever found is 10.5 inches long. I spanned 10.5 inches. They are long, they are pointed, they look really menacing, don't they? But if you look at a T-Rex tooth up close and personal, you'll find out they have serrated edges on the front and the back like a bread knife. You do not need that to cut meat. That is what you need to cut thick, fibrous vegetable materials, for instance, celery, palm fronds, banana leaves, that kind of stuff. And a 10.5-inch long tooth only has a 4-inch root. So it has shallow roots. Think about your teeth. 2/3 of your tooth sticks into the gum and your jaw, but T-Rex tooths, only 4 out of 10.5 inches are in the jaw. So they have shallow roots. Remember that they are widely spaced. Here you can see teeth widely spaced, is that correct? But your teeth touch each other to help reinforce each other, is that correct? And I would like you to think, imagine for a moment that a T-Rex did in fact eat meat and were attempting to kill a large animal weighing 2, 3, 4 tons, struggling for its life. Tell me, what would happen to those teeth? But that's not the way we find them, and they don't reproduce their teeth like sharks. And recently we found fossil grass in the stomach of a fossil T-Rex. So evolutionists now agree, for 16 years they were vegetarians. I mean, even think about those little tiny arms. Did you ever notice those little arms on them? They're so short they can't even feed themselves with those things.
Right.
Hello? That's a tough problem, you know?
Right.
Now, back in Brazil, back in 2005, my first mission trip to Brazil, we found the skull of a crocodile 50 foot long. And the book of Job describes, well, any of these 4 creatures. So perhaps the word Leviathan is one of these 4, or it may be a generic word for all of them, but certainly we have the physical evidence to prove that Leviathans existed. Is that correct? And then, of course, if we take a look at Psalm 91, verse 13, in that verse it talks about real lion, real snake, and then it talks about a serpent or a dragon. Again, dragon is just an alternative word. Some translations use reptile, serpent, dragon, but it could easily just as well be dinosaur, correct? And I'd like to show you something we found at Hell Creek, Montana back in 2003. Now, Hell Creek, Montana is world famous for massive, massive amounts of dinosaur bone findings and skeletons. And I want to show you something we found. In 2003, we found this. This is a 12-foot long dinosaur skeleton. The nickname is Dragon King, but the technical name is Dracorex hogwartsii. Anybody here familiar with the Harry Potter movies? Well, it's named after Hogwarts in the Harry Potter movies. Now, I would like to do something here. I want you to take a look. I'm going to show you a close-up of the skull of one of these creatures. Then I would like to ask you, when you look at the skull, does it sort of kind of look like what you'd sort of kind of expect a dragon to sort of kind of look like? Are you ready? Apparently not. Are you ready? Oh, well, this is what the skull looks like. Now tell me, does this sort of kind of look like what you'd expect a dragon to sort of kind of look like? And I would agree with you completely. And then, of course, if we go to Isaiah chapters 14 and 30, again, Isaiah describes flying serpents, flying reptiles, flying dragons. Again, in Portuguese and in Russian, the word dragon is commonly used, and that's just the old word for dinosaur. But here it says flying. Is that correct? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we think that Well, here are the drawings of two of the winged reptiles we know of from the fossil record. And when Isaiah says he saw flying reptiles, flying dragons, we think he's talking about the little one up here. Now, the technical name is Rhamphorhynchus. And for the young people here, there will be a spelling test tomorrow after I'm gone. Hello? Now, Rhamphorhynchus is only the size of a seagull. I think you do all know what a seagull looks like, right? But let me talk with you about the bottom one here. Now, there are others. This is just the drawing of two. But let me talk with you about the one down here. I'm going to show you a photograph of the skeleton of one of these creatures. Now, this is the photograph up here. So this is the skeleton hanging in the ceiling of a museum. Would you agree it's a little hard to tell how big that is, right? I mean, you don't have any perspective there, do you? But I'd like to show you how big it is. So I'm going to show you the drawing of what it would look like if one of those creatures was, well, if a man was standing next to one. You remember the brachiosaur leg, right? Well, now I'm going to show you what it would look like if a man was standing next to one of those creatures. The skeleton is here. This is what it would look like. There's the man. This is the creature you see here. You see it has a wingspan of 36 feet. That's bigger than a twin-engine aircraft. And I want you to think about it. I mean, this is not something you would want to meet in a dark alley, correct? Oh, come on, folks, group hug. And, well, that's 11 references to dinosaurs in the Old Testament. But let us think. Do we have any reliable history of dinosaurs and people living together after the completion of the Old Testament? Well, you probably know me well enough by now to know we do, or wouldn't bring it up. Is that right? So let's take a look. I mean, the Bible is reliable history, period. But let's take a look at additional reliable history of dinosaurs and people living together, even into recent time. Now, the Old Testament was closed about 400 BC. At that time, there is a world-famous Greek man who believes in evolution. So he's Greek, and he does believe in evolution, but he is world-famous. You see, he's considered to be the greatest historian of the ancient times outside of the Bible. His name is Herodotus. He is so famous, he's called the father of history. And about the time that the Old Testament was completed, he writes a book in which he talks about winged serpents, flying reptiles, that they lived in Arabia and Egypt. And the description of it he gives down here sounds exactly like Rhamphorhynchus that I just showed you, that we think Isaiah was talking about 300 years earlier. How y'all doing? Well, that's 2,400 years ago. Now, 100 years after this very famous historian Herodotus, there's another very famous Greek man who also believes in evolution. How many of you remember a guy called Alexander the Great? Oh, come on, folks. If you don't remember him, he'd be really upset. Hello? But Alexander the Great, he is invading Western India in the late 300 BC, and well, along the way, they saw dragons. Well, that's 2,300 years ago. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are going to be a serious student of the Bible, you must read the famous histories of the past. You would first read the Christian historian of 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Luke. He is the historian of the early church. But if you're going to be a serious student of the Bible, you must also read, well, the most famous of non-Christian historians of the time, Flavius Josephus. Yes. And 2,000 years ago, Flavius Josephus also writes about flying serpents, winged reptiles, but he gives us one very interesting comment. He says they lived in holes in the ground but flew through the air. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been less than 15 years since we actually did find what I'll call fossil dinosaur burrows. We have actually found where small dinosaurs did dig in the ground and live. But he wrote about this accurately 2,000 years ago. That gives credence to his history. Would you agree? And at the same time, we have a Roman evolutionist, Pliny the Elder. Now, he was a naturalist, an early form of scientist. He died at the eruption of Vesuvius in 79. You see, he wanted to study volcanoes, and he got too close. Come on, folks, don't tell me that science can't be dangerous. But 2 years before he died at Vesuvius, he wrote a book in 77, and he talked about how dragons and elephants fought each other in India at that time. 200 years later, a Roman evolutionist named Flavius Philostratus wrote that in India, every ridge and every valley had dragons. The ones who lived in the swamps were slow and sluggish, and they had a crest on their head. Now, why would he write that unless he knew there were dinosaurs that did not have a crest on their head? Lends credence to his histories as well, is that correct? Now, I can't go through all the references. We do have a DVD where I show a lot more, but let me just jump ahead. How many of you remember a guy named Marco Polo? Come on, Marco Polo. And now, he left Europe in 1271, headed to China by going overland, and he arrived in the spring of 1273. He then accurately describes an encounter with a large two-legged dinosaur. He said it had two large legs. It's a serpent, therefore a reptile. It's about 30 foot long. It has a big head full of big, sharp, pointed teeth, something that looks like that. And he accurately describes this 700 years ago in China. I think you would also agree that in the Orient, China, Japan, and so forth, dragons are ubiquitous in art, literature, and so forth. Is that correct? Now, of course, much of it is mythological, but you have to remember that reality is always the basis for what becomes myth. And so, we can see here, and by the way, in the very famous year 1611, anybody familiar with that year? Well, in the very famous year of 1611, we actually have the official court records of the Emperor of China having to hire a royal dragon feeder, or can be translated royal dragon caregiver. Now, that is only 400 years ago, is that correct? And let's go back to Europe. The year is 1484. The first printer in England, William Caxton, to use a printing press with movable type, never printed a whole Bible, but he did print Bible verses on that press. But in 1484, he printed a book talking about how dragons existed in northern Italy at that time. Now, that is 1484. Ladies and gentlemen, only 90 years later, we have the report of a genuine scientist. As a matter of fact, he is a world-famous scientist. He is so important. His name is Ulysses Aldrovandus, but he is called the father of modern natural history. He is the first man in history to actually get a large building, collect over 7,000 specimens, put them on display in the world's first true natural history museum. And in 1572, he actually gives to us an account of seeing a small dinosaur. It was a juvenile. It was not an adult. And he draws it here. Here is his Latin. Remember, Latin was the science language of the time, but here is his Latin inscription here. And so he shows us this drawing. Now, it was only 2 foot long. It was a baby. It was not an adult. I would like all of you to look at that picture very carefully. Do you see anything that looks peculiar to you? No back legs, only 2 in the front. Therefore, you are going to say, well, that's not real. That's mythology. He just made that up. Is that right? But you'd be absolutely wrong. Let me show you 4 pictures of reptiles that still are alive today. The first one. This is called a rhino lizard because it has a little horn on its nose. That's why it's called a rhinoceros lizard. But I've noticed it only has 2 legs in the front. Is that correct? Or if we go down to Mexico. Now, I know it's very hard to see, but I'm going to ask Pastor and those of you that are really close to the screen, can you see that there are two small legs right behind the head here? Is that correct? So it has only two legs in the front. Is that correct? Let's go to Australia. Again, notice there are only two small legs right behind the head there. Is that correct? And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to show you something that I grew up with in California. Look carefully at this next picture. At first, you're going to think it's a snake, but look carefully. It is not a snake. Notice that there are two legs in the middle. Hello? So here are four live lizards today that have only two legs, three of them in the front, one in the middle. How y'all doing? That drawing is reality. Hello? Again, let's go to the year 1496. The Cathedral of Carlisle. The Cathedral of Carlisle is in northern England, right up against the boundary of Scotland. I was there 4 years ago. And in 1496, the Christian bishop of the cathedral died. His name was Richard Bell. As was the habit of the time, he was buried in the floor of the cathedral. You see his tomb here. And by the way, anybody here involved with music ministry? Pastor? Anybody here? Anybody else? Willing to admit it? Well, I thought you just might like to know. He was buried in the middle of the choir. Apparently, he liked music. I don't know. But English cathedrals are world famous for their brass plaques. And here you see brass plaques on top of his tomb. Is that correct? But you'll notice one right here. I want to show you that one up close and personal. This looks like that. Here you see clearly two long-necked dinosaurs with their necks entwined. But notice carefully, they are two different species. You see the horns on the tail of this one that are not on this one? That allows us to actually know exactly what species of dinosaur that is. See here? Well, this is only 500 years ago in northern England. Is that right? Well, again, I can't do all of them. We do have a DVD with a lot more. But I just want to show you one more historic reference to people and dinosaurs living together. But I want you to notice what I'm about to share with you comes from an evolutionary source. The year is 1883. An article published in the Scientific American magazine. That magazine is still being printed today. It is 154% devoted to the teaching of evolution. But in 1883, this evolutionary publication actually printed an article talking about how a small armored dinosaur died, eyewitnessed in Bolivia that year. Now, I think that when an evolutionist tells you they saw a dinosaur die in 1883 in Bolivia, it's worth taking note, don't you? So people and dinosaurs really did live together until very modern time. This is the last observation of a live dinosaur that I consider to be reliable history. I would also remind you that it was only 1912 when we rediscovered the Komodo dragon. It's not a dinosaur, but think, it's a very large lizard. And as a matter of fact, it hunts deer. Hello? They grow upwards of 10 foot long. They're a powerful, nasty lizard, let me tell you. Well, with that in mind then, remember that God sent to Noah the animals he was to take, correct? And that includes one pair each of the various kinds of dinosaurs. So for just a moment, I would like to stop and talk about dinosaurs, fossils, and so forth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, think with me. What is one of the unique characteristics of reptiles? It is that they never stop growing. As long as a reptile is alive, it will continue to get bigger, just like fish do, okay? Now, think with me for a moment. I moved to Orlando, Florida in 1973. And down in Florida where I live, we have a reptile you may be familiar with called an alligator. Now, we have so many alligators in Orlando, Florida, we think of them as neighborhood pets. We do. We think of alligators as neighborhood pets until they get to be about 6 foot long. Now, I span 6 feet. But see, when the alligator gets to be about 6 foot long, they sort of have this personality change. And they get really nasty. And they start eating the cats, dogs, babies, old people, and tourists. We hate it when they eat the tourists. It's bad for business. You know, you look like I'm kidding. I am not kidding. Just 7 years ago, we lost 3 whole tourists to alligator attack in the state of Florida. Hello? Now, when I moved to Orlando, Florida in 1973, the American alligator was on the endangered species list. But of course, what happens when you protect an endangered species? Well, they overpopulate, correct? In the 1980s, the American alligator was taken off of the endangered species list. Today, in the state of Florida, we have 1 million alligators alive in the state of Florida. And today, we now have a hunting season on alligators in Florida. You know, we sort of consider it the other white meat. No, it tastes a little like chicken. Hello? Now let's think about this for just a second. In nature, where they are protected, now we have hunting seasons, but there's places that you can't hunt them. But in the areas where they are not allowed to be hunted, what is the average size and lifespan of an alligator? Well, in nature, they average 50 years old. And, again, they never stop growing. Is that right? Now, in the state of Florida, they have an average life expectancy of 50 years of age, and male alligators grow to a length of 13 to 15 foot long in the state of Florida. Now, think with me for just a second. The Bible tells me that there was a time when people used to live to be 900 years old. Is that correct? Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, of course, the average life expectancy of a human man is 75 years of age in the areas where they're not hunted. Apparently, you all have never been to Miami. Now, think with me. If alligators live on average 50 years and people 75, that means that alligators grow to be 2/3 as old as people, correct? So think with me for just a moment. If there was a time, and I believe there was, absolutely and categorically, a time when people lived to be 900 years old, I have a DVD listing 19 scientific and medical reasons why people lived to be 900 years old prior to the flood, because the environmental conditions were different than they are today. That's why we don't live as long as we used to. But there are 19 scientific medical reasons why, taken in combination. But if there was a time when people lived to be 900 years old, how old was the alligator? Excuse me? What was that? 600 years old, and they never stopped growing. Didn't I just show you fossil crocodiles that were 40 and 50 foot long? Well, think about how reasonable that is if you think about the Bible telling the truth. Is that right? Oh. Well, then let's think further about dinosaurs and fossils and so forth. Now, I would like to find out what you know about dinosaurs. So I'm going to ask you to think of all the movies, the museums, the textbook drawings, pictures, whatever that you have seen, all the different kinds that you have seen. And then I would like to ask you, if you would, please tell me, looking at that, then trying to come up with an average length for a fully mature adult dinosaur, about ready to drop dead from old age, okay? So at maximum maturity, maximum size, what is the average length of a fully mature adult dinosaur? And we'll take bids. We'll just kind of do this little auction here. Do I have an opening bid? Oh, by the way, I should tell you, remember, dinosaurs hatch from eggs, right? They never stop growing. And the longest dinosaur we have found recently was found in Patagonia in Argentina. And it measures roughly 130 to 135 foot long. I'm just trying to give you, some parameters here. So knowing that, then, what was the average length of a fully mature adult dinosaur? Can I get some bids now? Opening bid? 200. Now, dear, I just said the longest was 135, okay? would you like to reconsider your bid? I mean, I'm a nice guy. I'll let you change if you want.
One you found, though, you might find one that's 200 feet. Sometime.
Now, she makes a good point. She makes a very good point. Remember, we haven't found them all.
Right.
So we could find one longer than 135. I don't think we'll find one 200, though. I think you have the gift of optimism, certainly. Another bid?
80 feet.
80 feet. Okay, thank you very much. I now have a realistic bid of 80 feet as an opening bid. Do I have another bid? I have a bid of 80, another bid, second bid? Yes, ma'am. What?
100.
100. Okay, thank you. I have a bid of 80, 100. Do I have one more bid? What? 65. Okay, so 65 and 80 and 100, right? Well, I'm going to stop the bidding because I have a funny feeling we're never going to get there. The actual average length of a fully mature adult dinosaur is between 3 feet long and 5 foot long. The current calculation is 4.7 feet. Hello? Yeah, the actual average size of a fully mature adult dinosaur about ready to drop dead from old age is currently 4.7 foot long. Now, I'd like you to think about this. Were any of you happen to come to church earlier this evening and you happen to notice that dog out walking its owner? Hello? Don't you have dogs in the neighborhood that are bigger than 4.7 foot long? And when you go home tonight, I want you to remember that the large neighborhood dog is bigger than the average size dinosaur. You have to remember, evolutionists only show you the big ones. You know why? They want your money. Hello? You see, they show you the big ones. Those are impressive because they want your money to pay them to go out and dig up more. Hello? That's how they stay employed. What they don't want to show you are all the little ones. But if they only average 4.7 foot long, there's got to be a bunch of little ones too. Is that correct? And many dinosaurs were only the size of a chicken. Some dinosaurs were the size of a house cat. Some dinosaurs were only the size of a squirrel. And are you ready for this? Because I know you've been paying attention. There was one dinosaur species that was only the size of a mouse. You should see her face. It lit up like a Cheshire cat. Yeah, there was one dinosaur species that was only the size of a mouse. It's got a great name. It's called a Mosasaurus. But technically, that means mouse lizard. You have to remember when the French named moose, it was they used mouse of the forest. It was sort of a contradiction in terms. Well, does that change your idea about dinosaurs? And what about dinosaurs in the ark? I said that there were dinosaurs on the ark. Now, first of all, here's a chart just showing you the size, relative size of some of the dinosaurs of the past, not all of them, but notice how small some of them are, and, of course, how large some of them were, too. The brachiosaur isn't even an average length when you just look at smallest and biggest. Well, I said that there were dinosaurs on the ark. Now, first of all, remember that the Bible tells us God sent to Noah those animals he was to take with him, correct? Noah did not collect them. He was busy building the ark. And God sent one pair of each unclean kind, and reptiles are unclean biblically. So he would have sent one pair of each dinosaur kind. And there really were dinosaurs on the ark. You can see them going in right here. I'm sorry, is that too small for you? Here's a close-up right here, you see, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share something with you. Since the year 1824 till the year 2004, 1,401 names had been given to different dinosaurs. However, in 2004, creationists and evolutionists came to an agreement. You see, atheists are always looking for immortality. Please tell me, how does an atheist get immortality? It's really quite simple. When they find something, they name it after themselves. And that is how an atheist gets immortality. Hello? Now, what happened in 2004 was we suddenly realized, came to an agreement, that some dinosaurs had as many as 2 and 3 different names because somebody had found a baby, named it after themselves. Somebody had found a juvenile, named it after themselves. Somebody had found an adult, named it after themselves. And we had even up to 3 different names for the same dinosaur. So in the year 2004, the number was cut back down to 668. But since 2004, there have been some new discoveries. Today, the number stands at 670. But the 670 can be grouped in 50 to 55 different kinds. So you would only need 100 to 110 animals to get all of the dinosaurs in the ark you do need. And we talked about the average size, and would you agree with me? What is God's objective with sending all of the animals on the ark? It's to repopulate the earth afterwards, is that correct? So would you agree with me that if you're God, you're kind of like smart? I'll ask that question again. Would you agree, if you're God, you're kind of like smart? So tell me, would you, if you were God, send the largest, biggest, most mature animals, maybe past the age of reproduction, or would you send the juveniles, able to care for themselves but ready to reproduce immediately? Well, you're going to send the juveniles, is that correct? Now, if the average length of a fully mature adult dinosaur before the flood is 4.7 foot long, on the ark as juveniles, they're going to average only about 2.5 foot long. Anybody really have a problem with dinosaurs on the ark? And there really were dinosaurs on the ark. Now, this should look familiar to everybody in the room. This is what you see in your typical public school classroom, for instance. This is called the geological time scale or the geological time column. And all of you have seen something that kind of looks like this, right? And the idea that evolution's cell is this. There are layers in the ground containing fossils, and at the top, that's the present. And then as you go down through the ground, supposedly you go through these various layers, getting older and older, until you get down here to the beginning here of the Precambrian. That's approximately 570 to 580 million supposed years ago, according to evolutionists. And this does look familiar, is that correct? But ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely not one place on the surface of this earth that you can dig straight down and go through all those layers in that order. Please do not misunderstand me. The layers do exist. The fossils do exist. But there's not one location on the entire surface of this earth that you can dig straight down and find all those layers in that order. There are only 2 places where this exists. In the textbooks and in the minds of those who believe in evolution. But nowhere does it exist actually on the earth. I would like to share 2 numbers with you. Now, these numbers are worth remembering, not hard, but 2 numbers I would like to share with you. I want to describe for you what we actually find in the ground. This is what we find in the ground. Now, you only find fossils in layers of sedimentary rock. What is sedimentary rock? It's just dried out mud, correct? It is some form of sandstone, shale, slate, mudstone, but it was deposited by water. And it's called sedimentary or dried out mud, correct? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we actually find on the surface of the earth. 70 to 75% of the entire Earth's surface is covered with dried out mud layers containing trillions of dead plants and animals that all drowned. I'll repeat that description. 75% of the entire Earth's surface is covered with dried out mud layers containing trillions of dead plants and animals that all drowned. Now, does that sound like slow, gradual accumulation to you, or the result of a 1-year-long worldwide flood? Sound like a flood to you? Sounds like a flood to me too. And when I figured that one out, I stopped believing in evolution. Hello? Now, with that in mind, I want to share a few other things. Nowhere do you have this order all in one place. Now, I will never lie to you. I will never confuse you. I will never attempt to deceive you in any way whatsoever. And I want you to know there are 25 locations on the surface of the earth, listed here, pinned here, where you can find some of the layers in the order shown in the textbook, but you cannot find them all, okay? So you can. But here's the second number that I want you to remember. Remember, I said that 70 to 75% of the entire Earth's surface is covered with dried out mud layers, correct? And containing the bodies, the fossils and so forth, of trillions of dead plants and animals that all died from drowning, correct? Now, here is the second number you want to remember. Of the 75% of the entire Earth's surface, of that, 80 to 85% does not even have 3 layers in the correct order according to evolutionists. Hello? We find the layers are missing. They're upside down. They're backwards. They're interlaced. We can go from older to younger to older to younger according to the evolutionary way of thinking. And here's what evolutionists actually do. You see, what they do is the layers are not all in the same place. The layers are in different places. And what evolutionists do is this. They take a layer from Asia, a layer from Canada, a layer from South America, a layer from Africa, and they put the layers in the order they want them. Then they tell us, well, this proves that we are right. But wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen, if you can rearrange the evidence, you can prove anything you want to. Is that correct?
Right.
Oh, here's another question for you. Would you agree, I'm not trying to talk you into it, but would you agree if I could find the thickest layer of any of the layers shown in that chart? Supposedly, it would represent the longest period of time for accumulation of that layer. Would you agree? I mean, just philosophically. If I could find the thickest layer of any one of those layers, it would supposedly represent the longest period of time for accumulation of that layer, correct? Here's the problem. If you took the thickest layer of all these layers found anywhere in the world, brought them to one place, stacked them in the order according to the textbook, the layers would be 76 miles high. What is the problem? The problem is the average thickness of all layers on the surface of this earth is 1.2 miles. Now that means that there is 74.8 miles missing. I think the technical term to cover that is bummer. Hello? Yeah. You see, this chart is simply layers taken from different places, put in an order, then sold to you as being accurate, but the fact of the matter is most of it's missing. And nowhere can you find it in the actual order they show here. I have one more question for you, by the way. Please tell me, is this a drawing or a photograph? You know, when you see these layers, they will often put pictures on the side to show you what animals looked like at different times in the past, according to the evolutionists. Is that correct? But is this a picture or a drawing? Well, it is a drawing. The last time I looked, you can draw anything you want to. Is that correct? And think with me for just a moment. Again, don't evolutionists claim that things are getting bigger, better, faster, smarter over time? That supposedly that's how we went from amoeba to man. Things got bigger, better, smarter over time. Is that right? You know, bigger, better, faster, smarter, right? Now, 2 things. Number 1, after you graduated from high school or college, did any of you ever go out, dig in the ground to see whether they were telling you the truth? Well, then how do you know they were telling you the truth? Secondly, as an intelligent, prudent human being, I mean, when you became a Christian, did you leave your brain at the door? Come on, folks, I told you there's no trick questions here. When you became a Christian, did you leave your brain at the door? No. Then as an intelligent, prudent, thinking human being, aren't you going to want to check and see whether things really do get bigger, better, faster, smarter over time or not? Oh, you would, is that right? Well, let's just take a look at a couple of things. Now, roaches used to be over 6 inches long. Hello? Yeah, you know, down in Florida, our roaches are about 2 3/4 inches long, but they used to be 6. How we doing? Or how about this? This is a live dragonfly. It has a 6-inch wingspan across here. But did you happen to notice what it's sitting on top of? A fossil dragonfly that's bigger. Is that what I just heard over there? Oh, yes. You see, here is a fossil dragonfly. You can see the head, body, the tail here. The 4 wings are here, and it has a wingspan of 17 inches. Hello? But that's a baby. Did you hear me? That is a baby fossil dragonfly. Adult dragonflies found in the fossil record have wingspans of 36 inches. Apparently, some of you haven't quite grasped that. Okay, you're driving towards Young Harris. You're doing a 70 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. And, hello? See, I followed Pastor last night. And this dragonfly with a 36-inch wingspan flies in front of you. You know, I mean, you're talking about serious car wash. Possibly windshield replacement, right? If you're on a motorcycle, I don't even want to talk about it, you know. So tell me, are things getting bigger, better, faster, smarter? Or if we look at the evidence in the ground, are things getting smaller, slower, and dumber? Well, I hate to be the bad bringer of news, but actually things are getting smaller, slower, and dumber. Ladies and gentlemen, genetic studies have shown since 2003 that you and I are losing 1% to 2% of our genetic information per generation. We are decaying, and we are decaying fast. Remember that you are approximately the 250th copy from the original. From the time of Adam and Eve, there have been roughly 250 generations. And each generation, we are losing, not gaining, genetic information. And this includes the genes for intelligence. And you and I are getting smaller, slower, and dumber. As a matter of fact, we have studies from the 1800s to prove that your grandparents, great-grandparents, were faster reaction times and in higher intelligence than you are today on average. Hello? And again, evolution say that things get bigger, better, faster, smarter over time, right? But they also say that things change over time. Is that correct? I mean, one definition of the word evolution is change over time, and they say that one kind of biological life form changes into a different kind of biological life form. Then it changes into a different kind of biological life form. Is that correct? But you just told me that you were thinking, intelligent, prudent human beings, so let's just see if that is true. Ladies and gentlemen, what you see here, this is the photograph of the top of the head of a little tiny ant species that lives in Mexico today. Below it, you see a piece of amber from the Dominican Republic with a dead ant. Would you agree? They're the same. But according to evolutionists, this amber from the Dominican Republic is supposed to be 25 to 40 million years old, but there's no change. Is that correct? Or, here is a live ginkgo leaf on a live ginkgo tree. This is a fossil ginkgo leaf from North Dakota. According to evolutionists, there is 150 million years between those two photographs. Tell me, do you see any more difference here than you would expect to see between any two leaves on any one tree? No. Or, these are horseshoe crabs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a fossil horseshoe crab. It's quite obvious. Is that correct? However, we have found recently horseshoe crabs found by evolutionists that look exactly like live horseshoe crabs today. This was found in February of 2008, so we're talking here, right, just 10 years ago. But according to evolutionists, these fossil horseshoe crabs that look exactly like the ones today are, according to them, 445 million years old. No change. How y'all doing? And what about chambered nautiluses? Now, perhaps you're familiar with them. You've seen them cut in half, perhaps in sale. Perhaps some of you even have chambered nautilus shells. In Florida, we have them to decorate our houses because they are so easy to get down there. And typically, they grow about 8 inches in diameter. They look like a big snail shell, but actually they're not. They're nautilus. Now, this is a quotation from the infamous National Geographic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, never, ever get your education from the National Geographic. That's right. Now, I want to put this where you can read it. It says right here, it remains essentially the same as its ancestors of 180 million years ago, a living link with the past. Today, they are typically 8 inches across. One species does go to 10 inches. But what's the problem? The The problem is that in the state of Arkansas, we have found the fossil shell of a chambered nautilus that is 8 feet across. Come on, folks, today they're 8 inches across. They used to be 8 feet across. Anybody here see a problem? Things are getting smaller, slower, and dumber, is that correct? And this is supposed to be one of the world's oldest fossil bats, dated by evolutionists as Eocene, supposedly 34 to 56 million supposed years old. But I have noticed that this fossil bat skeleton looks exactly like bats do today. Is that correct? No change. Now, I want to talk with you for a moment about how do evolutionists date fossils. Remember, if you were here Monday night, I proved they don't use modern technology because they know there is no modern technology that will date anything accurately beyond written record. Is that right? So how do evolutionists date rocks and fossils and so forth? If you'll watch me for just a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how they do it. They don't use modern technologies. This is how they do it. They tell us how old a rock layer is by the fossil you find in it. Then they tell you how old the fossil is by the rock layer you found it in. Apparently, I have to repeat that. They tell us how old the rock layer is by the fossil you find in it. Then they tell us how old the fossil is by the rock layer you found it in. It is totally useless circular reasoning that proves absolutely nothing. And I said that those layers were not in the order shown in the textbook. Ladies and gentlemen, this is from northern Montana. This block of rock is called Chief Mountain. It's a big block of rock, okay? Now, this is sedimentary rock. You can even see the layers in it. And it's sitting on top of another layer of sedimentary rock, which is different. Now, based upon the fossils that are contained in the top layer of Chief Mountain, evolutionists tell us that the top of the mountain is 1.5 billion years old, dated as Precambrian. But it sits directly on top of a layer of dried out mud down here, which contains fossils, but those fossils are different. And because of that, evolutionists tell us that the bottom of Chief Mountain is 110 million years old. Anybody have a problem with that? Yep. You do? Well, good. So let's think. What do we have here? First of all, the layers are upside down or backwards. Is that correct? But there's something else. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's interesting when a scientist becomes a theologian. We bring scientific tools to the study of the Bible. A good scientist and a good Bible student always asks 2 questions. These come from science, but they're equally applicable to your Bible study. A good scientist always asks 2 questions. Number 1, what's there? Meaning that when I make a scientific observation, I must accurately describe what is present, what is there. The second, more important question is, what is not there? And we learn more by asking the second question than the first. Absolutely useful for Bible study. So here we have, well, what do we have? 2 layers of dried out mud containing fossils. According to evolutionists, the top is 1.5 billion years old. The bottom is 110 million, correct? Well, that's what's there. Now, would you please tell me, you tell me, what's not there?
The dirt between those years.
Excellent. There's 1.4 billion years missing in between, is that right? So these layers are upside down, and there's 1.4 billion years missing. Again, I think the term for that is bummer. Hello? And let me ask you just 3 quick questions. This is only for consensus. Number 1, can you bend rock? Come on, folks, it's not a trick. I don't ask. Can you bend rock? No, it will crack and break, correct? However, you can bend mud. Is that correct? Oh, just like a potter with a vase and so forth, right? Number 3, still water lays down flat. Water seeks its own level, correct? Well, having answered those 3 questions correctly, I would like to take you to the Big Bend National Park in Texas. This is a rock formation in the Big Bend National Park in Texas. Here we have approximately 35 layers of limestone rock. Would you agree this sedimentary rock is folded? Is that correct? but it is not broken. It's weathered, but it's not broken, correct? Now, evolutionists would tell you that each of these layers was formed slowly and gradually, one at a time, one on top of the other. But remember, if that were true, number one, they would be flat. Is that correct? Look at what you're seeing. What you're seeing is that all 35 layers of limestone sedimentary rock was deposited flat by water all at the same time. And then, because of tectonic forces, they were folded, and only after they were folded, they dried out into hard rock. Isn't that what I see here? Well, let's take this up one step in magnitude. Now, these are the very beautiful Calico Hills in Southern California, and of course, this is a parking lot. You have to describe what's present. Hello? Now, here I see approximately 75 layers of dried out mud. I have noticed they are folded. Is that correct? Well, that's good, but now let's ask the question, what's not there? Please tell me, number one, if these layers were laid down slowly, gradually, one flat layer, then later another flat layer, then later another flat layer, well, each layer would have been exposed for a certain amount of time before the next layer was put down, correct? Then please tell me, why are there no soil horizons? Why are there no V-shaped erosion marks? Why are there no root holes? Why are there no animal holes? Because if each layer had been exposed, that's what should be there. But all four are missing. That tells you that all these layers formed at the same time, while wet, folded by tectonic forces, and only after folding dried out. Is that correct? Hello? Apparently you're not happy with those. Well, if you don't like those layers, how about these layers? That is a real place. Nicknamed the Wave. It requires a permit to hike in to see it. It's a fragile area, trying to preserve it. But here we see almost every kind of sedimentary rock you can think of. Interlacing, older, younger. We see tremendous folding. We see, well, here we see, again, shearing here and here. And this area up there, that is called cross-hatching. That can only occur when you have massive amounts of rapidly moving mud water. That is the only way that will form. This all speaks of a worldwide flood. Would you agree? And let's take this up one step in magnitude. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are the very beautiful French Alps. And take a look carefully. Did you happen to notice a layer of mud laid down flat by water that starts here, folds up this mountain, down this mountain, up this mountain, and except for the escarpment would fold back down again? And that tells you that the entire French Alps are just the folding of wet mud layers after the flood. If you have your Bibles here tonight, you can turn to Psalm 104. Psalm 104, a creation psalm. Verses 1 through 4 summarize the creation week, but verses 5 through 9 give the chronology of the flood. And in Psalm 104, verses 5 through 9, in verse 5 and 6, God sends a worldwide flood. In verse 6, he says, the water was standing above the mountains. Now, that's consistent with Genesis that says that the highest mountain before the flood was covered with water. And here it says that the mountains, well, the water was above the mountains. Now, this is not a local flood. You know, there are people who believe in a local flood, but it's not a local flood. It's a global flood. Hello? I mean, if it was a local flood, why build an ark? Why not just walk away? You know, if a few thousand animals die in a local flood, believe me, squirrels will reproduce. Hello? Now, think with me here. This is indicative of a worldwide flood, correct? Now, in Psalm 104, verse 7, it says, after the mountains were covered by water, then the waters went away. Verse 8. Now, unfortunately, from the Hebrew, I have to kind of help you here. In the Hebrew, what it says in verse 8 is this: after the water went away off the surface of the earth, the end of Noah's flood, then the mountains rose up and the valleys sank down to the place you established for them. In verse 9, God promises he will never again flood the earth with water. So verse 8 says the mountains will rise up, the valleys will sink down to the place that God established for them. Take a look at this photograph again. The mountains rose up, the valleys sank down. That's just biblical terminology for the folding of what mud layers after the flood. I'd like to show you one more photograph. This is an official Canadian government photograph taken in the Western Rockies, the British Columbian Rockies of Canada. Please look at this next photograph and tell me, do you see any significant degree of folding? Anybody see any degree of folding here? That is a glacier back there. And it shows that the British Columbian Rockies are just the folding of what mud layers after the flood. Remember, we showed how the continents moved, right? And when continents move, that's a lot of momentum, and it'll fold a lot of wet mud layers in a heartbeat. And if you were here on Monday night, I showed you my second favorite fossil. Do you remember my second favorite fossil? Nobody remembers my second favorite fossil? Come on, the fossil Teddybearosaurus? Oh, yeah. Right? But I promised you that if you would come tonight, I would show you my all-time most favorite fossil. Now, you wouldn't just do that for anybody, so we're friends, right? You know, you all need to work on your level of sincerity. Come on, we're friends, right? Well, this is my absolute all-time favorite fossil, all fossils ever found in the world. It's a fossil Fedorosaurus. Now, this fossil Fedorosaurus was found in Tasmania, and we know that it had fossilized in less than 90 years. So tell me, is fossilization a rapid or a slow process? It's a rapid process. I did notice, however, that some of you did not like my Fedorosaurus. That's okay, I'm a big guy, I can take it. But if you didn't like my Fedorosaurus, maybe you prefer this other species of Hatosaurus. This is called a Bowlerosaurus. Now, this Bowlerosaurus was found in New Zealand, and it had fossilized in only 60 or so years. But what I find really intriguing about this Fedorosaurus is next to it, we found this complete whole Hamosaurus. Come on, folks, that's a complete whole ham fossilized. It's fossil pork. Everybody with me here? Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, in 1903 at Eureka Springs, Arkansas, we found this bag of flour with the burlap bag and the flour inside fossilized, and it had fossilized in less than 30 years. So is fossilization a rapid or a slow process? Well, it's rapid. And I'm sure at this point you're saying, well, gee whiz, Dr. Grady, is there anything else human found in the fossil record? And of course, you know me well enough by now, I wouldn't bring it up unless we had. Let me just show you a few examples. This is a man-made stone, mortar, and pestle. I think you would agree, correct? And these are man-made stone, mortar, and pestles. These are man-made stone tools. These photographs, please notice, come from my beloved University of California, Berkeley. You see, we found these during the gold rush in California. Over 300 man-made stone tools found during the California gold rush. They were looking for gold in the ground. They found these man-made stone tools. Today, they are on display at the University of California, Berkeley. But here is the problem. The layer of rocks that these over 300 man-made stone tools were found is, according to evolutionists, 9 to 55 million years old. Hello? Now, if you were here last night, evolutionists say that people have only been recognizable from apes to people only for the last 1 to 4 million years. But here we have man-made stone tools in layers that they date at 9 to 55 million years old. How y'all doing? And let's keep going. Now, how about this Spoonosaurus? Now, this Spoonosaurus was found in 1937 in medium-grade Pennsylvania coal dated by evolutionists as more than 300 million years old. And you will notice this is a highly evolved Spoonosaurus. It has an enamel glaze. And what about, this small black iron pot was found in Oklahoma, 1912, inside a piece of hard anthracite coal, meaning this. I mean, when you take a look at this pot, would you agree that this pot is of obvious human manufacture? Is that correct? But it's found inside a piece of hard anthracite coal, which, according to evolutionists, is more than 300 million years old. I don't know about you, I think I see a problem. Or what about this Dollysaurus? Oh, come on, folks, that is a Dollysaurus, right? Oh, come on. It's got a head, a neck, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, a torso, 2 arms, leg and a half. I think it's human, don't you? It's made out of fired clay. It is basically terracotta. It's quite small. Here you see it compared to a penny, so it's only that big, okay? But let me explain to you how it was found. It's called the Napa doll because it was found in Napa, Idaho. Now, in 1889, in Napa, Idaho, they wanted to drill a water well to provide water for the town of Napa those days. You can still go to the location where this was found. You see, what they did in the summer of 1889 was they drilled a well down 320 feet, and out of the well water, that little doll, because it was small enough to fit up the pipe. Here's the problem. According to evolutionists, the layer in the ground this doll came out of, 320 feet below the surface, is, according to evolutionists, 12 million years old. Anybody here got a problem with that? Well, I'm going rapidly as we close. What about this Hammersaurus? Now, I find this Hammersaurus very, very interesting, personally. If you will look at the skull of the Hammersaurus right here, you see a little scratch right there. This is where we removed a tiny amount of the metal and we analyzed it. It is an almost pure form of soft steel. And the handle that you see here, though broken here, but the wood handle that you see here is still wood. It is not stone, it's not permineralized. It's wood, and at the bottom, the little dark area down here, that is coal. So the part of the handle we have is still wood, and a little bit of it at the bottom here has turned into coal. Now remember, how do evolutionists tell us how old fossils and rocks are, right? Well, it's by the fossils, correct? And next to the skull of this Hammersaurus, we found this seashell you see here. Now, because of the species of fossil seashell found next to the skull of this Hammersaurus, according to evolutionists, they say that this Hammersaurus is 440 million years old. Anybody here got a problem with it? And ladies and gentlemen, as we close tonight, I would like to introduce you to a friend that we found not too long ago. Tonight, I would like to introduce you to the Limestone Cowboy. This cowboy died between 1950 and 1951. We know that because he died in true Western condition. He died with his boots on. Hello? And because of the manufacturer and the stitching of the boot, we know he died in 1950, 1951. In 1980, we accidentally found him, and his body was fossilized. When you dig up old graveyards, you often find the bodies in the graveyards fossilized. If there's water with mineral in it moving through the ground in a graveyard, many of the bodies become fossilized. So please tell me, is fossilization a rapid or a slow process? Oh, it's a rapid process. Now, why should this all be important to you? I want to thank you for coming for 4 days. You've absorbed a lot of material, but why should this be important to you? I want to read you a comment. Now, this is 1999 from a Christian source, of course, but they did a study, and I quote from the study, 75% of all children raised in Christian homes who attend public schools will reject the Christian faith by their first year of college. You should be so happy you have a Christian school here, and you need to support it. You see, I'm not here just because of the adults. I'm concerned about the adults. But I am more concerned about your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. You have no concept of what's going on in public education, whether it's the public schools, whether it's the colleges or the universities today. Think with me for a moment. It is hard enough to raise a child and keep them a Christian through 12 years of a public school education. Can I get agreement? Amen. But think with me. What happens when you send them away to a university? I'm not picking on UNC or, any of those. It could be anywhere that you want to go. But when you send them to a public university, what happens? You take them to the university, you tuck them in the dorm, you hug their neck, you kiss them goodbye, and you say, "Make us proud." Is that right? But tell me, did any of you ever hold their hand when they went into their first class in their freshman year? Because it is no longer just in the science classroom. Today it's in physical education, history, art, music, literature. Today, there are militant, atheistic professors standing up in front of your children, the first class of their freshman year in every subject, and they are saying, if you are a Christian, if you believe in creation, you're an idiot. And we are going to spend the next 4 years proving to you that evolution is true. And because your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren do not have the information to defend themselves, we lose 75% after 1 year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was 1999. Pastor, I'm not trying to put you on a spot here for just a second, but are you familiar with the Barna Group? Yes. Barna does good demographics, correct? Yes, so Barna, and Pastor agrees, okay? Interestingly enough, on the very prophetic date of 9/11, but in the year 2006, Barna reported the number had gone up to 80%. We are losing 80% of our young people to the world after only 1 year at a secular university if we don't give them the information. Ladies and gentlemen, I am just an ammunition bearer. I'm bringing you the ammunition, but you're the ones that have to use it. That's what those materials out there are all about. You have to educate yourself and then educate your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. I hate to say it, but if you don't do it, you're going to lose them. Hello? Well, I hate to end on a negative note, but I think it's a negative note that makes a positive point. How about you? Well, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to meet you back at the table. Pastor, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. McMurtry. I appreciate him, don't you guys? Really appreciate him coming. I think it took us about 2 years to get him here. But I hope that he makes space in his calendar to come be with us. I would really like to have him every year come in for 3 or 4 days and teach even more about, creation. He shares the same heart that I do for our young people today. They really need the truth. And unfortunately, they're not going to get it at a public institute of learning. It's not going to happen, especially if you're going into the medical field. And that's even harder, scientific field. So we have a lot to pray about, and I'm telling you, I hope that this week has helped you as much as it has me. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity to be here. I know that it's a little later than normal, so we're going to stand to our feet. They do have school tomorrow. I want to mention one thing about Monday night's game. Are you ready for it? The greatest thing that happened in that game was not during the game. The greatest thing that happened after that game is when Tua Tagovailoa stood up at the end twice and said, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because with him all things are possible. See, God raises up people to be able to put on a stage, to be able to use that brief moment of time to brag on our Creator, our Savior, our Lord. And I'm telling you, whether it would have been Georgia or anyone else, I'm just glad that somebody took that time to be able, you know why? Because there are kids all over this country that are looking for someone like him to have the courage to speak up for Jesus. And so we want our kids to be courageous in standing for the Lord. And I believe that we are trying to do everything that we can to build them up, to give them that strength, because I don't know about you, but I want our kids to take what they've learned these past 4 days and use it in their classroom. Let me tell you something. Don't be scared to speak up in your science class. Don't you do it. You stand tall. If you need Pastor Chris or Pastor Kyle to come sit with you in there, we'll be glad to come. Okay? We might have to get Dr. McMurtry to come up here and sit with you in class sometime. But we love you. We appreciate you. Let's exercise tonight. Remember service on Sunday. Let's exercise. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. May God bless you. Be careful. Good night. See you Sunday. Bring 3 people with you. It's going to be good.